Hello students, a very welcome to you all. I am Komal ma'am and I am starting with the very first chapter of class 7 science, which is nutrition in plants. So let's start. So let's discuss the contents of this chapter. In this chapter we will study about the mode of nutrition in organisms. In this topic we will study about how organisms, how plants or animals get their food and get their nutrition from food. Next topic we will study about photosynthesis. You've already heard what is photosynthesis. It is a process by which plants make their food. So we will discuss it later. Third topic we will study about is heterotrophic nutrition. It is a type of nutrition and this topic contains different types of nutrition which we will study later. Fourth and last topic of this chapter is insectivorous plants. What is insectivorous plants? That plants which eat insects. So we will discuss it in detail later. Let's move forward. Now what is nutrition? What is nutrition and how do we get it? So here is a definition. Nutrition is the process by which an organism takes in food and utilizes the contents or components present in the food. Basically, what I'm saying is, if a person eats food, that food contains some components. That food is utilized by human or animal or any organism. The contents or substances present in the food is only utilized by that organism. The mode by which organism taking in is the nutrition. Now, next slide is saying food is essential for all living organisms. We know we eat food, but we can't make the food. But who can make their food by own? There are only plants which can make their own food. We make our food in the kitchen, but ultimately what we make is obtained from plants or animals. But plants make their food by raw materials such as sunlight, carbon dioxide, water, etc. So the food which we eat or which animals eat or any organism which eat food are composed of some components such as carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, etc. All these components which I have told, carbohydrate, vitamins, minerals, fats, proteins, all these components are known as nutrients. Next point in our slide is all these components are called nutrients as we have said. Now, each nutrient means carbohydrate or protein, vitamin, etc. Each of the nutrient have a specific function to do within our body. For example, let's say carbohydrate provides us energy. So these all components present in our food gives us some kind of energy or some kind of repair in our body, some kind of ability to fight against diseases. So all the nutrients present in our body or food is helpful in utilizing or helpful in functioning of our cell. So basically the nutrition is of two types. One is autotrophic nutrition, which we will study in detail, and the second type of nutrition is heterotrophic nutrition, which we will study in detail. Let's move towards autotrophic nutrition first. So what is autotrophic nutrition? In this type of nutrition, an organism makes their own food. It is a nutrition in which organisms not depend on others to get food, but can make or can self-sufficient to make their own food. Now, the organisms which make their own food are known as autotrophic organisms or autotrophs. And the type of nutrition by which they are getting nutrients is known as autotrophic nutrition. What are the examples of autotrophic nutrition? Plants are the best example and the only example of autotrophic nutrition. So here I written that algae, which is a plant, and some bacteria are also there which can make their own food. So autotrophic nutrition has example of plants and some bacteria which are autotrophic in nature, means they can make their own food. Now move towards the next slide, which is heterotrophic nutrition. In this type of nutrition, organisms cannot make their own food but depend on other organisms or plants to get their food and nutrition. The organisms which cannot make their food but depend on other organisms to get food are known as heterotrophic organisms or heterotrophs, and the nutrition is known as heterotrophic nutrition. Now, what are the example of this type of nutrition or this kind of nutrition? Human beings. We are the best example of heterotrophic nutrition. How? Because we cannot make our own food. If I say we can make our food, then think I can make my food in the kitchen only, and the food I am making ultimately or eventually comes from plant or animals. If I make pulses, or I make some chicken or meat, it has come from animal or plant. So I cannot make my own food, but plants make their own food. They are not getting food or any material from any other organism, but they use raw materials such as carbon dioxide, water, and other things to make their own food. So we are, and some animals are examples of heterotrophic nutrition. Now, as you can see from this picture clearly, this is a giraffe. An animal is eating food from plant, is eating leaves from plant. This animal is taking food or taking nutrition from plants. So he is a heterotrophic animal or heterotrophic organism. But plants are not depend on any other organisms, but they make their own food by some raw materials. So this is the picture clearly showing us the example of heterotrophic nutrition, as the giraffe is ultimately depend on plant to get food. He cannot make his food by his own, so he's getting food from plant. The organism, I have told, the organisms which are depend on other organisms to get food or ultimately cannot make their own food by any other means are the example of heterotrophic nutrition, and the organisms are known as heterotroph organisms. Now, here is a video which tells us how plants make their food and what are the conditions they need to make their food. Let us watch a video now. So, plants need 3 things to make their food. One is water. They need water. We water a plant. Their roots absorb that water from soil and transfers that water to all the parts of plants, including leaves. Now, next thing they need are carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a chemical present in our environment already. So second thing they need to make their food is carbon dioxide. By which part or by which thing they get absorb these gases, carbon dioxide? So by which structure or by which cells they absorb carbon dioxide? As we all know, all living organisms, including us, including plants, all living organisms are made up of tiny particles which are known as cells. Plants are also living organisms. So they are also composed of cells. They do have cells. In plant cells, there is a specialized openings or structures, or we can say pores, by which they absorb carbon dioxide, and that pores are known as stomata. Next thing the plant needs to make their food is sun light. In plant cells, there are special structures known as chloroplast. This is a plant cell. They have tiny structures called chloroplast, which contains chlorophylls. Chloroplasts contain chlorophylls, which helps in the absorption of light from sun. In turns, they make plants by using all these components. You make sugar, which is a glucose, and oxygen. What I am saying is, plants can make their own food by the process known as photosynthesis. Now, what is photosynthesis? It is a process by which plants make their own food with the help of carbon dioxide, water, chlorophyll, and sunlight. These all are the components which helps in the photosynthesis, or these are the components by which plants make their food. So next point is, so I would like to ask, what part of plant or which part of plants make the food or helps in the making of food? So answer is, leaves are the site, or leaves are the place where the synthesization of food takes place in plants. So most of the photosynthesis takes place in leaves. That is why leaves are known as food factories of plant. Next slide is saying, in plants, first of all, in this process, food is synthesized in the form of glucose, which is a simple carbohydrate. Plants make their own food, but the food is first prepared in the form of glucose, which is a sugar, and glucose is a simple carbohydrate, and it is the main source of providing us energy. So plants make their food in the form of glucose, but they do not store this glucose. They store the glucose in the form of starch. Starch is nothing but a complex carbohydrate. So let's move forward now. Next slide is saying, the presence of starch indicates the occurrence of photosynthesis. What does it mean? If a plant has done photosynthesis, then the starch must be present there. Means, if I take a plant and I test it for starch, which we will study later, if I study a plant or a leaf and I test it for a starch, there is a starch present. If, then must be it performed photosynthesis. Means, if there is a starch, that I can say confirmed that that plant or leaf has performed or undergone by photosynthetic process and made food, because starch is the food for plants, which they store in themselves and releases oxygen in the environment, which we will intake. So next point is, to find the presence, which I have told, to find the presence of starch in leaves, there is a test which is named as iodine test. To test the presence of starch in any plant or any leaf, we do a test which is named iodine test. In this process of photosynthesis, as we have already studied, in the process of photosynthesis, plants make sugar, which is a glucose and which is a simple carbohydrate. They make glucose as their food, which is a simple carbohydrate, but they do not store that glucose as it is. They store that glucose in the form of starch, which is a complex carbohydrate, but they use it as a food for themselves. Plus, in addition, they emit oxygen in the environment, and that oxygen is utilized by all living organisms by the process of respiration. The air we consume or the air we inhaling is oxygen, from environment. Where does the oxygen comes from? This is the process, or this is the place where oxygen comes from. Plants produce oxygen and they releases that oxygen in the environment, and we utilize that oxygen by the process of respiration. This is all about the photosynthesis. Now move forward. Here are what are the conditions necessary for photosynthesis to occur. So all these four are the conditions are necessary for photosynthesis to occur. First is chlorophyll, we will study it in detail. Second is sunlight, third is carbon dioxide, and fourth is water. Now we will discuss these one by one. So let's move and study about chlorophyll. What is chlorophyll? It is a green substance or a green pigment present in the specialized structures known as chloroplast. Now what is the chloroplast? Chloroplasts are the tiny or specialized structures present in plant cells. As we know that all living organisms are made up of cells, plants also made up of cells. So plants have cells. In their cells they have a specialized structures known as chloroplast. Their chloroplast contains a pigment or a substance which is known as chlorophyll. Now next point is chlorophyll molecules are the main sites of absorption of light. Why it is written here that they are the main sites of light absorption? Because the absorption of light during photosynthesis, plants need light, or plants need sunlight for the making of food. They absorb sunlight with the help of these structures. These structures means chlorophyll is a substance. The substance chlorophyll present in chloroplast helps in the absorption. Actually it absorbs the light from sun and helps in the formation of food for plants. So chlorophyll is the main site where light gets absorbed and helps in the photosynthesis. Now next is sunlight. It is the second condition necessary for photosynthesis to occur. As we all need energy for functioning our body, we know that if we talk, if we walk, if we do anything, we need energy. Plants also do need energy for the making of food. So where does they get energy from? They get energy from sun. So sun is the ultimate and only source of plants to get energy from. So we can say sunlight is the only and ultimate source of energy. Now by which structures, as we have already discussed, by what structures or what substance plants absorb energy or sunlight? It is chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the pigment or substance which helps or which absorbs sunlight. Now it is all about sunlight. Next is carbon dioxide. It is essential for photosynthesis to occur. This is the third condition for photosynthesis. Now where does plants get carbon dioxide? As we know, we have so many chemicals in our environment. In addition, we have carbon dioxide in our environment. Plants need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis to occur. So the cells of plants have tiny pores or openings known as stomata. These stomatas absorbs carbon dioxide from environment and helps in the process of photosynthesis. Now after making the food, the oxygen which is liberating or which is emitting from plants to the environment, this oxygen is also get into the environment by the structures known as stomata. So basically stomata are the small or tiny structures present in the plant cells which helps in the exchange of gases. Now next is the stomata we are studying about is These are specialized pores present on the lower surface of the leaves or in the epidermis of cells. Where does this stomata is present? Suppose here is a leaf. Leaf containing so many cells. In these cells there is a chloroplast which is containing chlorophyll. Chloroplast have chlorophyll. Now where are these stomata present? In the lower surface. If this is a leaf, this is the lower surface of a leaf. Lower surface of a leaf contains these tiny small pores known as stomata. So, or we can say the epidermis of cell, the layer, the outermost layer of a cell contains these structures, these stomatas, which helps in the gaseous exchange. So what stomatas do? They play very important role in the exchange of gases. Now we see structure of stomata. Here is the structure of stomata. Both are stomata. This is known as stomatal aperture. Stomatal aperture or pore. Now this stomatal pore is the place by which gaseous exchange takes place. Now this stomatal pore is guarded by two cells which is known as guard cells. Now we can move further. Water. The last condition of photosynthesis is water. They need water for photosynthesis, but where does they get water? We water plants. That water goes into soil. Now how plants use that water from soil? By roots, obviously. There are roots under the ground. Plants have roots under the ground. That root absorbs waters and some other things which are known as minerals. Plants absorb water from soil and transports the water in other parts of the plant, including leaves. That's how they get water. So water is also essential for photosynthesis, and it absorbed by the roots, as we know. Here is an activity to perform or to identify that is chlorophyll seriously needed for photosynthesis. Now we will test it, that it is required or not. Chlorophyll is necessary for photosynthesis or not. To test this, we required or we need some things: a potted plant with variegated leaves like coleus or croton, and we need a beaker, test tube, alcohol, iodine solution, and a watch glass. Now what is variegated leaves? We are doing this experiment to show that chlorophyll is really needed for photosynthesis. So we need a variegated plant or variegated leaves. Variegated leaves are nothing but differently colored leaves. Means the part of leaves have different colors, yellow or red or green. So we will see by a test that if I take a leaf, which have green part, which have yellow part, which have pink or red part, do all these colors or do all these parts, red, yellow, green, makes food? Do all these colors present on leaves make food and need chlorophyll? We need some requirements, or we need some things I have showed. Now next is procedure, how we do this activity. We will take a potted plant with variegated leaves and keep it in a dark room. We need to take a potted plant with variegated leaf, and we need to put that plant in a dark room for 72 hours or for 3 days. Now, because it is placed in a dark room, it is destarched, means the plant which is placed in a dark room does not performing photosynthesis, and if it is not performing photosynthesis, it is not able to make food. And what is the food of plants? It is starch. So there is the absence of starch. That plant without photosynthesis or without food is known as destarched plants. Now what we have done is we put a plant in a dark room for 72 hours or 3 days. Now we take that destarched plant and put that same plant in a sunlight for 6 hours. Now plant has done photosynthesis with the help of many things, with the help of carbon dioxide from the environment and sunlight and water. Now that plant has done photosynthesis and starched. Now what we have to done is pluck a leaf from that plant which we have put in sunlight for 6 hours. We have to pluck a leaf from that plant and we will test on it for the need of chlorophyll. This is the plant which is put on in a dark room, and this is a plant which is put in the sunlight. Now we will do starch test. How do we perform starch test? Put a leaf in a boiling water for 2 minutes. We will put that plugged leaf in a boiling water for 2 minutes. We boil it. Then after taking that leaf from boiling water, we place in a test tube containing alcohol. The test tube which is containing alcohol, in that test tube we will put a leaf. Then the test tube will be heated in a beaker containing water. What we have done is we plucked out a leaf from starch plant. Then we heat that leaf in boiling water for 2 minutes. Then we take out that leaf and put it in a test tube containing alcohol. Then we have to heat that test tube, and we will not heat that test tube directly on flame. We need to heat that test tube in a beaker containing water. Now after heating test tube, we will take a leaf out and place it on a watch glass for test. Now after placing leaf on watch glass, we will add some drops of iodine solution. After iodine solution adding, what we will observe is the green part, only the green part of leaf turns blue black in color, and the remaining part of leaf which was not green remains same or turned brown. Now what we have concluded from this experiment or this activity is iodine solution gives blue black color with starch, because that green part of leaf which we have placed in sunlight does photosynthesis and made food, which is a starch. Only the green part of leaf contains starch and gives blue black color on iodine solution. So it is clear that iodine solution gives blue black color with starch. It is concluded from this. Now green portion, we have already discussed this. Green portion turns blue black in color and the remaining part remains same. This activity shows that only green portion of leaves contains starch or performs photosynthesis, but not other parts of plant or not other parts of leaf perform photosynthesis. Hence, it is proven that chlorophyll is essential for photosynthesis. Now we will be discussing about heterotrophic nutrition. As we know, what is heterotrophic nutrition? In this type of nutrition, an organism, it may be plant or animal, an organism is totally dependent on other organism to get their food or to get their nutrients. These type of organisms which are depend on others to get food and nutrients are heterotrophic organisms or heterotrophs. They cannot make their foods by own. So first point in this topic is some plants do not have chlorophyll and cannot synthesize their own food. As we know, for plants there must be chlorophyll present in them to prepare food and for occurring photosynthesis. So some plants are there in which chlorophyll is absent, and some plants are there which have chlorophyll but cannot prepare their food. So here we can discuss, if the plant having no chlorophyll, obviously it cannot prepare its food and they have to depend on other plants for food. If a plant is not having chlorophyll or not having that condition which can help in them for making food, then it will eventually depend on other organism or other plant or animal to get food. Now, next point is this type of nutrition in which an organism, it may be plant or animal, in this type of nutrition an organism which is depend on other organism to get food or nutrition are heterotrophic organisms, or the nutrition is known as heterotrophic nutrition. Now there are three types of heterotrophic nutrition. One is parasites, then second is saprotrophs, and third is symbiont. Now we will be discussing them one by one. Let's move and discuss first one, that is parasitic plants. As we know, heterotrophs means those organisms which are depend on plants or animals to get food and nutrients. They may be animals, they may be plants, they may be insects, they may be any organisms which are depending on other plants or animals to get food. But we will be discussing about plants only in this chapter, as this chapter is about only plants. Now we will be discussing about parasitic plants. There are some plants who are parasites. What is parasite? Parasite is those organisms which takes food from other organisms and harm that organism in turn, but get nutrition for itself. As first definition is, parasites are the organisms, it may be plant or animal, which takes food from the other organism. This definition clearly shows who are parasites. Parasites are those organisms which takes food from other animals or plants, and the organism is known as parasite. Now that organism from which they getting food, the organism from which they are getting food or they are eating to get nutrients or to get nutrition are the organisms called hosts. Who are hosts and who are parasites? Suppose this is food and this is organism. He is eating this food and this is also an organism. It may be plant or animal. That organism which is having food or which is eating other organism is known as parasite. And the organism which is eaten by the other organism is known as host. In this kind of association means in this kind of relationship in which host and parasites both are present, in which only parasites be benefited. This lines clearly shows, means if parasite is eating food on host, this host will get die, or this host will get no benefit, but obviously this parasite will get food and nutrients, so it will be benefited. Now next slide is showing some of the examples here, and here is a definition. Parasitic plants take their food from other plants. There are plants who are parasites, are known as parasitic plants, and they take food from other plants. Here are some examples. You can see this is Cascuta. In this plant, Cascuta is this. You can see here was a tree, and this growing yellow part you can see is Cascuta. It covers the whole plant to absorb nutrients from plant. Eventually, the Cascuta is known as parasite, which eats the other plant, and the plant which is eaten by it is host. Then after some time, the tree which is eaten by Cascuta will eventually die. Now next is example, Cascuta I've already told you is a parasitic plant. Now it has a special tubular structure. As you can see, there are tube-like structures, green tube-like structures which are falling to the ground. They have a special structures, or we can say they have a specialized roots which are known as hostoria. By that structure, hostoria, they get nutrients or they get suck food from other plants. Now it penetrates into the tissues of the tree from which it will get foods. By these specialized structures called hostoria, they get stuck into their tissues. They get stuck in plants' tissues to get nutrients from them. Now example of parasitic plants are Rafflesia. This is Rafflesia. Yellow rattle, it is one more example. Mistletoe is also an example of parasitic plants. This is a plant in which it is a green plant, but it cannot make its own food. Means it is a green plant, of course, it have chlorophyll, but it cannot make its own food. So it absorbs mineral and water from other plant which is known as host, and it will prepare its own food. Now another example is witchweed and broom rape. Now move to the next slide. Now we will be study about saprophytic plants. What are saprophytic plants or saprophytic organisms? In saprophytic organisms, it is a type of nutrition, or it is a type of organism in which organisms feed on dead or decaying plants or animals. They can feed on dead and decaying matter only. The dead or decaying plants and animals. They cannot feed on living organisms like parasite was doing. Parasitic plants were feeding on living plants. Plants are living, so they were eating plants, which is a living organism. But in saprophytic organisms or saprophytic nutrition, the organisms which feed on other organism, it may be die or decaying. In this type of nutrition, what happens actually, if suppose a plant or animal dies, then fungi will come and fungi will suck the nutrients or decompose them and releases a liquid. Then these organisms suck their nutrients then. Now first point is the organisms which take food or nutrients from dead or decaying matter, it may be animal or it may be plant, are called saprophytic plants, and the nutrition is called saprophytic nutrition, which is obvious. The organisms which are feeding on dead decaying matter means dead animal or dead plant. The organisms which are feeding or which are eating dead or decaying plant or animal are known as saprophytic plants, and the type of nutrition will be called as saprophytic nutrition. Now next point is, here are some examples. Fungi, which is commonly known as mushroom, Indian orchid and snow orchid are some examples of saprophytic nutrition or saprophytic plants. Now these plants do not have chlorophyll. Because these plants do not have chlorophyll, so they cannot make their own food by the process of photosynthesis. Thus, they are totally dependent on other organisms, plants or animals to get their food or to get their nutrients. Now, third and last category of heterotrophic nutrition is symbiont plants or symbiotic plants. Symbiotic plants or symbiosis means it is a relationship or it is an association between two different organisms in which both the organisms get benefited. What we have studied earlier about saprophytic organisms or plants, that only one. In symbiotic plants or in symbiosis, I can say it is a relationship or it is an association between two different organisms in which both the organisms present in this type of nutrition get benefited. What we have learned earlier is one organism get benefited and one will be destroyed. So in this type of relationship, which is a symbiotic plant or symbiosis relationship, both the organisms will get benefited. Now, symbiosis is a relationship, I told symbiosis is a relationship between two organisms, two other different organisms. In this type of relationship, both the organisms are benefited from each other. One will get benefit and other will also get benefit. They both are in relationship of symbiosis and get benefited from each other. The organisms present in this relationship are known as symbionts. The organisms, first and second organism, both the organisms present in this relationship are known as symbionts. Now, what are the example of symbionts? Lichens. What is lichens? As you can see the picture, this is a tree. This is a tree bark. Tree bark have green microscopic plants, green small plants, which is known as algae. The green part you can see on tree's bark is algae, and white part on green algae is known as fungi. So these both the organisms are in symbiotic relationship and provides something to each other. Algae is a green plant because it have chlorophyll, so it can make food and provide food to fungi. Fungi absorbs nutrients and water from tree and provides it to the algae. So both are in symbiotic relationship and provides things to each other and get benefited by each other. So lichens is the example of symbiotic relationship. What is lichen? The relationship of algae and fungi and the type of nutrition they are sharing with each other is nothing but lichen. Here is a tree. What is leguminous plants? First, leguminous plants is which have nodes or which have leguminous plants is which have nodes in their roots. So this is a plant which have nodes in their roots, and there is a bacteria called rhizobium is present there, which absorbs. Here you can see, here is a bacteria called rhizobium, and these are nodes of roots. What are the example of leguminous plants? Grams, peas and beans. Now, rhizobium bacteria have ability to convert atmospheric nitrogen into nitrogenous compounds which are soluble in soil. So it can provide nitrogenous compounds to plants. In turn, plants get food and plants give food to bacteria, and bacteria, rhizobium bacteria, gives nitrogenous compounds to plants. This is a symbiotic relationship between a bacteria and leguminous plants such as grams, peas and beans. Now, What is insectivorous plants? We will be talking about now insectivorous plants. Insectivorous plants is the plants which can eat insects and get nutrients from insects. These plants are very small, so they cannot eat big animals. They trap insects and get nutrition from these insects. Some plants trap insects with the help of special leaves present in them to get the supply of nitrogenous compounds. They do so because they need nitrogenous compounds and they do not get it by own, so they trap a fly or they trap any insect to get nitrogenous compounds from them. They have a special leaf like structure. As you can see, this is a picture of Venus flytrap. It have these leaves and have these hair like structures on their leaves. The leaves of these plants are open generally. When the insect flies and sits on their leaves, they closes their leaves and digest the insect with the help of digestive juices present in them. So this is a Venus flytrap which eats insects or which digests insect to get nitrogenous compound or to get nitrogen, to get nutrients from insect. Now these plants are known as insectivorous plants. The plants which eat insects and get nutrients from insects but cannot make their own food or cannot perform any other thing to get nutrition from insects, the plants are known as insectivorous plants, such as pitcher plant. This is a pitcher plant. Venus flytrap, that is Venus flytrap, and bladder. In pitcher plant, there is a leaf-like structure which is known as lid of this plant and have slippery walls on them. The insect or any animal, small animal, comes between these walls or approaching these walls, they get slip into this cavity of plant by the slippery walls, and then this plant closes their lids and digests the insect. Now we will talking about pitcher plant. This is a special plant which have slippery walls on body and a leaf-like structure which is known as lid. The hair-like structures are present in its body. When an insect comes closer to it, it gets fall down in this cavity due to its slippery walls, and the hairs present in body move insects downwards, and the insect will get digested. Insects try to come out of this, but it closes that leaf-like structure known as lid, so insect cannot come out from this. When an insect enters in the plant, the lid closes and the trapped insect is digested by the digestive juices present in them. As I already told you, the insect will get trapped by this plant. It closes the lid. Insect will get digested by the juices present in it. Now let's move further. Insectivorous plants are green in color. As you already seen, the pitcher plant and Venus flytrap all are green in color and can synthesize their own food. Obviously they can synthesize their own food if they are green, means they have chlorophyll pigment and can synthesize their own food, but then also they trap insects because they usually grow in places where nitrogenous compounds are less in soil. If a plant is planted in soil where the nitrogenous compounds are less in content or are nil in content in soil, then where do they get nitrogenous compounds? So that is why they trap insects to get nitrogenous compounds from them to get nutrients. To meet the requirement of nitrogenous compounds, they trap insects and kill to extract or to take these nutrients. So they require nitrogenous compounds and they do not have nitrogenous compounds from soil. So because they need nitrogenous compounds to meet their requirements, they trap an insect and get the nutrition or get nitrogenous compounds from insects. That's all. Thank you.